Okay, welcome to Angel Talk. Today we have a very special guest, Whitney Wiser. For those of you who don't know her, she has been on the Olympia stage. She's spoken at a TEDx conference. She's head promoter of the Nashville Fit Show, as well as so many other things. But today we are going to talk about what our listeners want to hear, and that is about her role as an NPC judge. Welcome to the show, Whitney.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and to share all of the expertise. So today we're going to talk about some mistakes that you see athletes make and what the judges are actually looking for in 2022, because that does evolve. But before we get started in all of that, can we hear a little backstory about you?
Yeah, sure. So I always like to hear kind of how people got involved in the sport too. So I'll start there on kind of how I got involved in competing at all. So I've been an athlete my whole life. I've been very competitive my whole life. I just love sports. So basketball, volleyball, track and field, I did every sport that I possibly could growing up. Whenever I was about to graduate college, I kind of was going through my head. I'm like, what am I going to do now? There's no more sports. What am I going to be competitive in? And I discovered the sport of bodybuilding right at the perfect time. I was actually bartending in downtown Nashville. A trainer comes in randomly and is like, hey, have you ever thought about competing? This was in 2009, by the way.
Oh, wow. That was right when Bikini started.
First
year. You are the ultimate OG.
Yes. So this is in 2009. And he's like, hey, have you ever thought about competing? Of course, I'm like, what is competing? Like, compete in what? And he's like, bodybuilding. And I'm like, bodybuilding? What the heck is that? That's weird. And so he showed me a picture of his client on stage as a figure competitor. And so he showed me, and I'm like, ew, I don't want to look like that. I was like, ew, that's like too much muscle for me. I don't want to look like that. But the seed was planted in my mind and I was intrigued enough by it. And so I started kind of exploring a little bit. And I was in the gym one day and I saw a cover of a magazine that at the time it had Jessica Paxson was her maiden name on the cover of it. And she is absolutely beautiful and looks so feminine with the muscle on her. I was like, whoa, I didn't know muscle could look like that. Okay, I want to look like that. And so I contacted that trainer and I'm like, okay, so how do I get started in this? Like, what do I do? He said, meet me at the gym. He wrote me a diet, got started. I was probably the worst client ever because like, I didn't know how to follow a diet or anything like that. I was a bartender. So I lived a completely different lifestyle than as what a competitive athlete would be. So navigating my way through that, it was a lifestyle change, one that was definitely needed. And so I kind of got used to it. I went through an 8-week prep, which is not very long. For people that don't know, that's a very short prep, especially for your first one. But I got on stage and I got second place. And
oh, congrats.
Well, you say congrats. I was mad.
I know we're both so competitive. We've talked about this before. I can imagine.
Competitive. And I was mad. I wasn't mad at the judges or the competitors or anything like that. I was mad at myself because I knew I didn't give it 100%.
Okay.
It was hard when you're prepping your first time, and this all first time competitors, just listen to this. Like, you don't know what you're prepping for. You're prepping for the unknown. So you don't understand the importance of the meals that you're eating and the cardio and everything. And so that's kind of where my mind was. I'm like, why do I have to do this? Like, it's not going to make a difference. So I would cut corners. I would skip cardio every once in a while. Like, I still lost like 15 pounds to do my first show, but I didn't give it my all. So I was mad. That lit a fire under me. And I'm like, I'm going to give it my all. So I started prepping for that same show. That was like a year later. I started prepping like right
there. I love that.
I'm like, I am going to do this. And so kept going. A couple years into the sport, I got second place every single time. Like, every time I competed. And I was like, what in the world? I'm tired of getting second place. So I'm like, a lot of people had told me, like, you have more of an athletic build, you would probably do better at the national level, because at that time, bikini was brand new. The judges were still trying to figure out kind of what they were looking for, especially on the local level. The girls winning were a lot curvier than me.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I guess I'll just prep for Junior USA's, the first national level show of the next year. And I prepped my butt off. I had no expectations. I'm like, if I get top 15, like, I'll be happy. I just want to get feedback from the judges to see how I can improve.
Yeah.
So I just went into it, like, put my head down and prep, like, hard. And so I got on stage, I had fun, I had a good time, and that showed. And I ended up winning my class at Junior USA's first national level show that I ever did.
That's amazing.
It is. But they were only giving out 2 pro cards at that time. So to the overall winner, I won my class, but I didn't win my pro card. And so after that, I'm like, what do I do now? And a coach, I didn't have a coach at the time, but I ended up hiring one at that show because I was like, I think I'm just going to go back and compete in Tennessee in 3 weeks. He's like, are you crazy? You just won your class at Junior USA's. You need to go do Junior Nationals next. And I was like, oh, okay. Is that how this works? Like, I had no clue.
Yeah.
So went into Junior Nationals.
And this was 2010.
This was 2011.
2011. Okay.
2011. So I go to Junior Nationals. I win my class again. It's an even bigger class. I win my class, but I missed my pro card because they gave it away to 4 overall winners, and there were 6 classes.
So close.
So I was like, at this point, I was like, wow, I could be pretty good at this sport. I think I'm going to keep going. So anyway, I was on top of the world. I'm from a small town. Like, I had never had this level of success ever. I was featured in like Flex Online magazine as like the one to watch to turn pro that year, which was like insane to me. I'm like, what in the world? So anyway, everything competitively was going great. Personal life, not so much. I actually was in an abusive relationship. And after this, I'd made the decision to leave this abusive relationship. And so we broke up. He wanted to talk about getting back together, and I agreed to meet him at my job at the time. Got in his SUV, talked for about 5 minutes, and I was like, you know what? This is a waste of time. Like, this is such a toxic, abusive situation. Like, I don't want it anymore. We're done. So I get out of the SUV. I started walking back across the parking lot to go back into my job. Well, he pulls out of the parking spot and floors it, like just pedal to the metal, coming right at me as I'm walking. Hits me, like, I see him coming because it's right on my left side. And everybody's like, why didn't you jump out of the way? And I'm like, I didn't know anybody was that crazy to do something like that. I thought he was just trying to scare me. Like, I didn't know he was actually going to hit me. So hit me. I crushed the grill, basically, slide under the vehicle, get caught under the vehicle, get dragged across the parking lot.
Oh.
And then whatever was holding me under the vehicle let me go. And when it did, the rear tire of the SUV rolled over my midsection and crushed my spine. So I never lost consciousness this entire time. So I'm in excruciating amount of pain, but I don't know like how bad the injury is or was. You know, you just, when something crazy like this happens, you're just in so much pain, you don't really know what happened. So there were 2 eyewitnesses. One saw the entire thing, and the other one just happened to be a former EMT. Like, imagine that. You know? So it's like God put these people in place to protect me from the next thing. Because if that EMT hadn't have been there, I would probably almost 100% be paralyzed today, because I would have tried to get up. I would have, because I was trying to. He wouldn't let me. He held my head down and would not let me get up. So the ambulance came, transported me to Vanderbilt Medical Center. I had metal rods and screws inserted into my spine, which are there today still. And the doctors were like, you know, you're going to have to learn how to walk again, and you're never going to get on stage again. So
that's heartbreaking.
I know. See, I'm just getting choked up just thinking about it. And they're like, you're never going to get back on stage again. So you need to mentally prepare for that. And luckily, my stubbornness has like helped me along the way, because I'm like, you must be crazy, because I'm getting back on stage. I don't care what you say, like I'm getting back on stage. And so that was my mindset afterwards. So I went back, I had to go live with my parents because I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
I couldn't do anything for myself. It was a whole new experience for me, because I don't like relying on people, but I had to. And learned how to walk again. And it started as, 5 steps a day. And then like I would try to walk down my parents' hallway. Like my dad would come home on his lunch break from work, and if I was still sitting in the chair, he would like get me up. He would make me get up. He's like, walk down the hallway. You got 2 laps. And oh my God, I hated it. It was just, I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
And so that turned into, okay, walk down the driveway, to walk down the street, to walk around the block. It's like little by little rebuilding every day. And it was, I don't know what the right word is, not humiliating, but it was just discouraging, I guess, to me.
Mhm.
To one day, like the day before it happened, I was in the gym deadlifting like PRs. And then to have to go to using 5-pound dumbbells and not even being able to walk, like that's hard.
Yeah. Because
Anybody,
you went from getting first place in your show at junior nationals to not being able to walk. Like
Yeah.
that's a night and day difference. To go through that experience, I'm sure gave you so much mental resilience. You don't need, like, that's incredible. Like
Yeah.
just you overcame that. So tell us about, like, when did you step on stage next?
So I stepped on stage a year later. I was definitely not at the competitive level that I had been
Yeah.
this year. But I pushed myself and I was like, come hell or high water, I'm going to be on stage, which probably shouldn't have done that. But I had to, that was my mindset. So I didn't even place at Junior USA's, because that's the next show that I did the following year. Didn't even place. Did Junior Nationals, didn't place. After winning both shows, not placing. It was discouraging, but
Yeah.
having that resilience, I didn't care. I just kept going. I'm like, this is all I have. Like competing
Yeah.
gave me a purpose to pursue. And that's what kept me going to overcome.
And then when did you get your pro card?
So 3 years later, in 2014,
Okay.
I competed, I think 6 or 7 more times, like
Yeah.
back to back to back. And in 2014 at Junior USA's, I finally won the overall and got my pro card.
So 2011, you were on the high of your career. You were basically almost had a pro card. And then it took you 3 more years. You started from scratch again.
Yeah.
So for anyone out there listening, that's a really inspiring story, because everyone has setbacks, but I've never heard a setback like this. So, you can overcome anything. And
Yeah.
that's a great lesson to learn for anyone listening. Whatever your setback is, you can overcome it and grow from it. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. So then after that, like that was my ultimate goal, was getting my pro card. And so when I accomplished that, like I didn't really know what else to do. So I just kept going. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna keep going. And I competed as a pro 6 times, didn't even place. I think I placed in the top 5 maybe 1 time. But I came into my 7th pro show and won the whole thing, which qualified.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yay.
It only takes
What
one
year was
round.
it?
2016. And so
2016. Okay.
that's the year I went to the Olympia.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, you have an amazing story. I'm so glad we touched on that first, but before we went into the judging part of it, because I know athletes love to hear that. Everyone has a story, and yours is so inspiring. We couldn't not share that today.
Yeah.
So thank you for being vulnerable and opening up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go ahead and start talking about the judging.
Okay.
So what are the judges looking for this year in 2022?
So, and I'm so glad we're talking about this too, because I know this is going to tie into something else you mentioned earlier about the biggest mistake that athletes make. And I think it's not knowing the judging criteria for your division. And also sometimes coaches don't even know the judging criteria, which if somebody hires a coach that doesn't know the judging criteria, that's not a good coach. That's not a coach you want. So npcnewsonline.com is where you can find all the judging criteria for every division. When you go to the website, and I'm about to do it now because I'm going to go through it, npcnewsonline.com, go to rules, and then you can scroll down to whatever division you're in. I think we can talk about bikini specifically today, but all the female divisions are judged on 4 criteria, and that is going to be muscularity, conditioning, symmetry and balance, and presentation. Now, just because all female divisions are judged on those 4 things, the level of muscularity, the level of conditioning is going to be different, obviously, per division, but it's those 4 criteria. So per NPC News Online, I'm going to read it exactly. Bikini athletes should display a foundation of muscle, which gives shape to the female body, full round glutes with a slight separation between the hamstring and the glute area, a small amount of roundness in the delts, a conditioned core. You got to have the overall look too, the hair, the makeup, the suit, the tan. And then it goes into what bikini athletes should not display. And that is muscular density seen in figure. So it's not going to be, you are going to have muscle as a bikini athlete because that's what gives your body shape.
Yeah.
Not going to be dense as like figure, women's physique, things like that. They don't want to see squared glutes. And when they say squared glutes, this usually happens when girls try to flex their glutes. When you flex your glutes in the back position, they are going to look like squares instead of round circles, basically.
That's a great tip.
So don't flex your glutes. We want round glutes, not square glutes. So remember that.
Yeah. So one thing that, you're reading these straight off the NPC News website, and the information is out there, and people still don't read it, or I think one of the pitfalls is maybe hiring the wrong posing coach. So I do think it's crucial to hire a posing coach that is specific to the NPC.
Yes.
Preferably an Olympian or an IFBB pro, because they know what the NPC is looking for.
Yes. And if you can find one that has judging experience too, that's even better.
Yes.
So then you're going to get the best knowledge. If you can find somebody that has been on stage themselves at a high level and has judging experience, like that's good. And there are several out there. So yeah. So one of the biggest mistakes that you see, would you say it's the square glutes of girls getting up there and flexing their glutes? Honestly, I think the biggest mistake is probably what you just mentioned, not hiring a posing coach at all, or hiring one that shouldn't be teaching posing. Yeah. And a lot of people think that like they have a coach like that knows the industry, but that's not always the best posing coach. Just because they're doing that, your diet and your training, especially if you're a female and you have a male coach, like the posing is taught differently by a female. So sometimes it's better just to get a female posing coach. It's just going to help so much. So honestly, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes, because if you hire the right posing coach, then you're not going to flex your glutes on stage. You're not going to make all the other mistakes that come, with posing. So.
Yeah. And I know, a lot of people listening are like, well, what if I don't have the money to hire these top level judges or athletes? Because those super qualified people are going to charge a price for their time with you. But there are all sorts of free seminars. I know Team Elite Physique has free seminars, with Ashley Kaltwasser. You're doing a couple Nashville Fit where it's a big group of girls to go to a posing clinic, and it's a little bit less money to do that group posing. So there's all sorts of different creative ways to go about it and get that posing help without doing all the one-on-ones, because that can really add up.
So what I still recommend, if you can do at least one session, typically when clients come to me, if they've never been on stage, I don't let them do less than 3 sessions with me.
Okay.
But if you can at least do one session with a posing coach, I mean, it might be $50. It might be a little bit more. Some coaches offer packages. Like if you do 2 or 3, it's like $100 and you get a deal. But honestly, it's going to help you. The value in it is so much more than $100 or whatever you're going to spend. Like
Yeah.
competing, you just need to budget for certain things that are important. There's things you can save money on, and there's things you just need to budget for. And this will like take you to the next level. Just meeting with a coach, opposing coach 1 or 2 times, and then practicing on your own will make a difference. So I still am all for coaching.
Yeah. You know, you hear people say frequently, competing is so expensive, but you know what else is expensive? Like going out on the weekends and getting rounds of drinks. Like it's actually less expensive than doing some of those hobbies that the average American does. So think about that too. Like you're investing money on yourself.
True.
Because it can be hard with this sport.
I feel like any sport or hobby is expensive. Like golf is expensive.
Oh yeah.
Like it's just expensive, and it's just depending on like what your priorities are and what you're putting your money towards, because we do, as a society, we go out to eat all the time. We spend money on lots of things, but then like when it comes to stuff like this, it's like, oh no, that's too expensive, or I can't eat healthy, it's too expensive. It's like,
yeah,
how much are you really spending though? So
yeah,
it's all the same.
Yeah, definitely. So there are a lot of athletes that I know personally this year that will say, I'm competing on the national stage and I am going to get my pro card. What advice do you have for them? Those athletes that have scored in the top 5 over and over again and just haven't gotten the pro card yet.
Okay. You went a different direction with that question than I thought you were going to go. So I'm glad that you added the second part.
Yeah.
But let me back up. And if somebody, because I hear this a lot, like somebody's going to nationals, they're going to turn pro. And I'm like, have you ever competed at the national level though? And they're like, oh no. And I'm like, okay, be a little bit more humble. And I already told you the story of me going to my first national level show. No expectations, but trained as hard as I could. And I went to learn, to get judges' feedback so that I could improve. So I feel like when somebody comes into it and they're like, oh, I'm turning pro, it's like, you haven't even competed at that level, and you're discrediting all the other like 100 athletes that are going to be in your class there. Like they're not saying the same thing and prepping just as hard as you.
Yeah.
So first, like go into it like with an open mind and willingness to learn, if you're at that place. But if you're at the place that you're talking about, where you've already placed top 5 several times at the national level, and that was me. I think I competed in 10 national level shows.
So that's why I specifically wanted to ask you this.
I was top 3 or top 5 almost every time. And so it got frustrating. But my best advice is keep showing up and keep getting judges' feedback. Keep showing up. It's like, this is like the whole like moral of the story is, I told you also, I never even placed top 5 my first 6 pro shows, but I come into my 7th show and I win it, which qualified me for the Olympia. It only takes one time. So you're placing from show to show. Like, don't get discouraged. Like, just keep showing up, because if you keep showing up, you're going to get the results you want eventually. And most people don't have the tenacity and the resilience to keep showing up if they're not getting the result that they want. So number 1, keep showing up. And number 2, don't overlook the importance of getting judges' feedback, because I did in the beginning. I was like, why do I need to get judges' feedback? I know my weaknesses. I know what I need to work on. Like, that was my attitude in the very beginning. But when I started getting judges' feedback, like, they would bring things to my attention that I wouldn't have ever even thought of. Like, yeah, I knew my weaknesses, but they are there to help. And I didn't know that in the beginning. I'm like, they're the enemy almost in my head. I'm like, they're judging me.
So the judges are there to help and to help grow you. They aren't, and I know they are intimidating, but they aren't there to be like, this is wrong, this is wrong. They are there to help you. That's a great tip.
Yeah. Because that was like, I just, from learning from all of my mistakes, like I really like thought they were against me because they were judging me in the beginning. Yeah. That's their job, but they are there to help. And especially like, that's one of the reasons I became a judge. Is when I became a judge, first of all, I became a better athlete because I got to see things from their perspective. And I realized like how much I was doing wrong on stage.
Yeah.
And number 2, I'm like, if I have this knowledge, I can help competitors even better. I can tell them like what they need to work on. Like, things like that. And most judges are like that. They are there because they want to help the athletes and they want to see you succeed. So go get feedback. And most of the time you can get it right there at the show. It's best to get it there. You can wait an email if you want, but you're going to wait a couple weeks to get feedback. So get it there at the show if they offer it.
Yeah, because once the stage photos come out, you look so much different in photos than what the judges see on stage. I didn't realize this until I was actually sitting on a judging panel this past November, and I saw it so close to the stage, and it gave me a whole new appreciation for the sport, because so many times on stage photography, it's like, well, that girl looks like she should have won. It's kind of, we all do it. We all try to decipher what the judges are thinking, but you can't unless you were sitting there live and you looked at the posing and everything as a whole. It's so hard to know what goes on through their head, but it truly is the best athlete for the division will win. There's no politics involved. The best athlete for the division will win.
Something else is like people look at photos trying to figure out like why somebody won over another person, but photos don't move. Like you can't see stage presence and demeanor in photos. Like there are things that jiggle on our bodies that you can't see in photos because it's a still shot. Now videos help a little bit, but being there, I'm glad you touched on that, but being there, like that's when you can really compare and tell like what's going on.
Even videos don't show it like it does when you're on that judging panel. So this is something I've never asked and I've never heard anyone talk about. But when I was sitting on the judging panel, you could see some athletes, maybe they were nervous, but their whole body was kind of quivering versus other athletes were standing there like a statue. How does that affect the posing or the judging?
Well, so it is obvious if somebody's nervous, you're not going to get counted off specifically for that. However, the overall winner, the judges are looking for somebody that has that confidence and is comfortable in their own body and being on stage. The first time you ever get on stage, it's hard to fight the nerves. You're probably going to be nervous. It's
yes,
okay.
I remember that.
It's okay. That's another reason I always recommend doing more than one class, because the first time you're on stage, you're going to be like really nervous, but the next time you go out, okay, I feel a little better. And then the next time you're like, I got this. So do like 2 or 3 classes if you can. You're already in shape. Just keep doing it because the more stage experience, the better. So that being said, like you're not counted off specifically, but the judges do want that confident overall presentation.
Yeah. And that's something that you can't see from the photos. And a lot of times you can't see from the videos. So it is important for all of the listeners to know with the judging, a lot goes involved in being there live in person.
For sure.
And that's where a posing coach can come in to help.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've given us so much great advice about judging. Do you have any like crazy judging stories you can share?
Not crazy judging stories. I think I have more stories from my time competing on stage.
I mean, you have a crazy story and an amazing story from competing. So
the first thing that pops in my head was a show that I did as a pro. It was Greater Gulf. I think it was 2015. And so there was a huge storm going on during the show that day. And like, I'm the last person because my last name is Wiser. And so like it's alphabetical order in pros. So I'm the last person to go. I go out on stage to do my routine. I get up to the box, I turn around, and then all the lights in the entire building shut off. Like it is pitch black, like pitch black. And I just freeze for a second because I'm like, I'm not trying to take another step and trip on a cord or anything. But within, it seemed like the lights were off a lot longer than they were. They were off for like maybe a second, 2 seconds, but it was pitch black. And so when they came back on, I just kind of spun around and shrugged it off and then just kept going. And everybody was just like laughing and like clapping. But there's a video of it on YouTube. I'll have to find it. But it's like, you never know what is going to happen on stage. And the better you are at just like rolling with whatever and owning it, the better. off your whole mindset is going to be.
Yeah.
So don't get caught up on like just the little things, because all the lights could go off in the building and you just have to keep going. Like something could happen at any time. But
Yeah.
that's the first
Yeah.
crazy thing that pops in my head.
And that tip you said about just keep showing up, the more times you show up on stage, the more comfortable you're going to get and the more confidence you will feel. So the fact that you were able to just kind of shrug it off shows how many times have you competed total? Do you
31.
know?
Yeah.
31. Wow. That's a lot. That is a lot. Okay. So a couple of fun questions before we get to the Q&A from our audience. So what is an unusual habit or something absurd that you love?
Gosh, I don't even know. I probably have a lot, but I don't realize that they're absurd.
You could ask your husband. I'm sure he could tell us.
Oh my God. We probably should ask him. He thinks I'm a little weird anyway. It's like it.
I know, like the husbands of this sport are like, they're so amazing and supportive, but I'm sure they just like think we're all weirdos.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can't think of anything specific besides just this lifestyle in general seems a little absurd to mainstream America, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what job did you want to be when you were younger?
God, I feel like I changed my mind so many times. I know at one point in high school, I wanted to be a forensic scientist. And so
Okay.
I wrote my career paper on that. And then I discovered that I would actually have to be touching the dead bodies on crime scenes. And I was like, whoa, this is not for me. Never mind. Change directions. I thought I was just going to be like wearing a lab coat and like doing all the cool things like on the crime.
Yeah, like CSI.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I want to be a forensic scientist. And I'm like, oh, wait, I have to touch dead bodies. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
So I changed my mind a lot. I think I went to advertising after that. And then I actually went to college and got my degree in marketing.
Okay.
Which turned out to be a pretty good decision.
Yeah.
But I was mad at myself afterward. I'm like, why didn't I major in something fitness related?
Yeah.
But you know what? Like I got the fitness knowledge just from all the experience in the sport. I needed the marketing knowledge, and now it like really helps me in my business. So to be the right decision.
Okay, last one question. If you could have a giant billboard anywhere that millions of people would see, what would it say on it? Or what would it be a picture of?
Oh man. I wish I had a deeper answer for you, but it would probably just be the Nashville Fit Show.
I love it because you're so proud of that.
I'm proud of it. It's like my baby. It's a platform for women empowerment, to inspire strength and confidence among women. So like I would put that on there and try to get everybody to get involved.
Yeah, because the Nashville Fit Show, it's bigger than just a competition. It's all about female empowerment. And it was the first, and it's the biggest, I think it was the first and the biggest show of all females. And we're really, Angel is really, really pumped to be a part of it. I can't wait until that weekend. It's going to be amazing.
Yes.
Okay. So we have 4 questions from our audience that I'm going to ask you. So the first one is from Haley Funk Health. And she said, where can I find all the info to getting started on my journey for bikini in my first competition?
So first, I'll say NPC News Online is a great resource. It has everything you need on there. It might be a little difficult for a first timer to navigate that website, but it is, all the information is there. I actually wrote a course for new competitors called Amateur Advantage last year because I get that question so many times on like, how do I even get started in this sport? So I wrote a whole online course about it, on like trying to figure out if competing is right for you, how to hire a coach, how to find and hire a posing coach, how to basically do everything. So it's called Amateur Advantage.
Okay. Can we put to that in our notes?
I will give you a discount code that you can offer everybody that watches this.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that. Okay, the next question is from Laura P.Y. Late. Hair. Doesn't matter if it's long. Everyone seems to be wearing it that way.
I'll say I've seen some competitors rock like a pixie haircut, short hair. I don't think everybody can pull that off. Me, I could never pull that off. I think it really depends on the person. No, it does not have to be long. Like if you are just a person with short hair, you don't have to change
Yeah.
you are to compete or anything like that. So a lot of girls just like long hair. So it usually does look better on most people. But if that's
Yeah.
not you, then don't feel like you have to conform to what everybody else is doing if that's not what you feel best in.
I love that answer, because if you do rock the pixie cut, will having longer hair make you feel more or less confident? Kind of think about that, because confidence isn't something you can really fake. I mean, you sort of can, but again, when we were talking about how some girls kind of quiver on stage,
Yep.
that's not something you can fake it all you want, but
You can't.
confidence, it needs to be intrinsic. So think about, what's going to make you feel confident. Okay, we got 2 more questions. The next one is from _Ashton Johnson. Any advice for competitors that will be stepping on stage for the first time?
Oh man, so much advice. I could talk about that all day, but I really just want to stress the point to have fun. And like if you're not having fun, then why are you doing it?
Yeah.
We only have one life to live. So don't do something like that's going to make you miserable. And the first time it might seem a little miserable, but just remind yourself like you are choosing to do this. And it's all about perspective and just keeping the right mindset around it, because prepping for a show will make you a stronger person. It'll make you a better person, but also just remember to enjoy it along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that tip, because if you only are prepping for show day, you're going to be discouraged after, even if you win, because
Yep.
there's so much that goes into the prep. You have to enjoy the prep.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, the last question. So this might be more of a question for me, but I'm going to have you answer it. This is from Aspen Fit and Food. Thoughts on stoning your own suit?
Oh, I think that is more of a question for you. I'll answer. I tried to stone my own suit one time and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
So I think that depends on how crafty you are. And most people probably are not crafty enough to do that. The stones were all like, they weren't in any kind of order on my suit. They were just like, they looked crazy and I got glue everywhere. It was a mess. So I personally wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend let Angel Competition Bikinis do that for you. So what is your answer, Karah?
So, okay, I actually tried to stone my own suit, my first suit as well. And I definitely spent probably 40 hours stoning it. It wasn't even like 10% stoned. Like it just takes so long if you're not doing it all day long. And I'm sure you've seen the videos we do time lapse where we can do it a lot quicker, a lot more efficient. So, I recommend if you don't have 80, 100, who knows how long it will take you to do it all. If you don't have that, to let us do it, because we love stoning it for you. But on the other hand, if you're someone who is really crafty and you can sit still for that long, by all means, go for it.
Yeah. And like I know people do things like this because they're trying to save money. And I get it. Like I cut all the corners I possibly could in my competition journey and learned what I should do and should not do. And that was one of them. It's like the time that you spend, like, let's just say it takes 40 hours, like you said, to stone a suit.
Yeah.
That's realistic. What could you have done with that 40 hours? You could have made the money that it cost. Like
Yeah.
you could have made triple the amount of money probably if you
Yes.
would just
So if you
pay.
don't really enjoy stoning it, maybe let us do it. And we are happy.
Yeah.
We are happy to help you. We have a free phone consultation. We can talk with you about all the different crystal options, and we've got you covered.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that rounds out all of our questions. Is there anything else you want to touch on about judging? I know you gave us a lot of great feedback and a lot of tips to help with the 2022 season. And we thank you for that. Do you have any last thoughts?
No, not specifically, but if people, I put out a lot of information on Instagram at, not so much on my personal page, but you can follow me there at Whitney Wiser Fit. I have another page that is specifically for teaching competitors, and it's at Wiser Fit Life. I put out lots of judging information, posing information, like that's all that page is. So if you want more info, follow that one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and everyone go compete at the Nashville Fit Show, or at least go watch it. Will you have a live stream for those that can't travel that weekend?
I will. Yep.
Okay, so there's no excuse to watch the biggest and the best female empowering show. It's all females, so
Yep.
we can't wait for all of you to watch that live in person or compete at it. And I will be there in person, and I'm so excited. Thank you again, Whitney.
Thank you so much.